Right. Is Shen already available here or not yet?
I think not yet.
Not yet, okay.
女朋友嘞？森哥，森哥，哎呦 ，hello， 哎。
Let's start to connect the laptop because we only have 20 minutes. Less.
挺紧张。是他们同学。
我们打球认识的。
哦，打球。
对。
打乒乓球。对，他挺有打乒乓球。
对，没有错。
那你在这里读？
我们才刚毕业，我来这里要2年，9月份毕业。
可以。
哎，什么？也是规划。哎呀，我要回去新疆，我是马来西亚人。
薇姐。我的天，感谢。一会儿你给我那个签个什么字什么的，是就是那个叫什么留言赠言4字。
那你们是同学吗？
对，我们是，不是我学，后来我
这里的学长吗？
本科也是。
那是很久了。
哎，我现在在干。
哦，那过来这里看。对。短期的工作，想去做，但是那你现在在读博吗？但是还没找到。就是我不是要回去了吗？然后1月一个什么研究助理这样的工作在 NUS， 然后他到8月份，但是我看了一下房价，然后各种各样，我觉得新加坡待不下去。
不要带900。
租房很贵。给他的你也帮他提着吧。
10 minutes before time, I will just do the everybody can hear.
链接里面也没几个人。我去年回去交换的，我交换的时候是觉得 OK， 我很想回来，但是真正要回去的时候，我就觉得我又不想要离开。比较安静。然后因为工作嘛，然后你是辛苦的，我真的给这几天在新加坡那个折磨了，几天就不想回去了。但是我并不高兴啊，就是出门，然后他房子再去我一半的。而且我家回去自信分也不是我家里就是2个小时发生就是。那东西不一样。
Hello.
Hey. No speakers, please.
Roman, you have to sit over there.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I made a mistake.
Did she ask for an AI assistant to these? I never saw that before, so I think I'm going to need it. It's the first time I see it with Steve. Or something. Easier to take up the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can say something.
Hello. Good.
Put it in your pocket, and I will turn it off in a technical room and put your jacket back on.
Okay. Hey.
Hi.
So.
Hope to see you on your Beetle this afternoon.
Okay.
And
Can you walking a bit?
good way to outside the No, I was more this morning,
So how driving the car behind you? Yeah, you get to can't go back. Sometimes you lose the car. You lose the car, you go back. Yeah, test is how fast you can. I don't know how fast it's running. Yeah, yeah. Ja. Ja, maakt het niet. Ja, dat zou ik wel moeten. Ja, want een beetje. Soms ja, dat is ook ja, ja. Dus daar is ja, een beetje. Ja, ik wou het even zeggen. Oh ja, ja, ja. Nee, ik heb het ja, hopelijk helpen. Ah, right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Classic it's not the first time you've maybe last part taking it. It's the same track. I think she did like they pulled it off. I think he likes it.
I don't play sports.
And then they don't say you go there.
All right. Fancy dinner. Oh, that's right, yeah. You tried to invite yourself. No, we didn't. Which is another question. So there was a bit of miscommunication.
Why is this? Please be seated.
With this, I would like to open the opposition or promotion session of the PhD candidate S Zhan. I would like to invite him to the podium. We are always proud of the fact and the committee members who are coming to the promotion from abroad. Today we have Professor Kiko from the Polytechnic of Torino, University of Torino from Italy. I hope he's going to be in this room available soon later on. And Dr. Grammatico from our sister university, from University of Delft, Technical University of Delft. I would like to invite the first promoter, Professor Slotweg, to start her position.
Geachte promovendus, can you present to us an introduction to your research and its contributions in 10 minutes?
Hooglied promoter. Yes, I can do that. The increasing connection of distributed energy resources has led to significant operational challenges in modern power distribution systems. On the left side of this figure, we show how PV production leads to voltage rise and reverse power flow. On the right side of the slide, we show how electric vehicle connections and heat pumps lead to high power demand and similarly congestion at the beginning of the feeder and the transformer. The traditional solution approach by the DSO is grid expansion, which however requires significant amounts of investment, a well-trained workforce, and a long-term process. Optimization methods have received a lot of attention in the literature, which are used to mobilize the flexibility of DRs. On the top of this slide, I show a block diagram of a offline feed-forward optimization exemplified by optimal fast flow. Based on the model of the system and estimate data, one can calculate an optimal set point for the controllable DRs, which are implemented into the system, and the voltages and power flows can be observed. However, this requires an accurate model of the system. It also requires load data, which are not always available. The largely centralized calculation is also not compatible with the real-time operation. Finally, this open-loop system typically lacks robustness. Recently, online feedback optimization has been developed in the literature, which uses an optimization algorithm as a feedback controller. Based on observing the system, it iteratively adjusts the set points of controllable DRs. An example is driving. When you are controlling your speed, what you do is actually you observe your speed, and based on the speed observed, you apply brake or gas. The objective of this thesis is to develop methodologies and algorithms that can efficiently utilize the flexibility of DRs to address voltage and congestion issues in distribution systems and at the same time support the operation of transmission systems. The 5 contributions are categorized into 3 different categories, from offline to online optimization and to an integrated approach which combines approaches from different aspects. In our first contribution, we studied the heat pump management in a low-voltage urban feeder. We compare a local peak shaving strategy with a centralized optimal power flow control in terms of heat pump management. The result shows that the centralized optimal power flow control is able to balance the base load and heat pump load better, resulting in a flat profile. The result further shows that the centralized optimal power flow control allows 100% DR connections without compromising grid security, while the local peak shaving strategy allows for 51%. In our second contribution, we address an important limitation in the real-time control of distribution system, which is fairness. On the left side of this slide, we show a primal dual algorithm, which start with collecting measurements, voltage measurements, power flow measurements from the systems, which are followed by the broadcast step, which is used to gather information in the primal update step, which can use to iteratively update the set points of DRs. One of the sources of unfairness is that buses located towards the end of distribution feeders generally are more effective in terms of solving voltage problems. This is shown by this voltage sensitivity matrix on the left side of this figure above. The strategy we propose in this work is simply by tuning the non-equal, non-zero entries to the same value. We theoretically analyze this strategy, and we show in a simulation that this leads to both in the single-phase simulation and the unbalanced simulation, to fair power curtailment percentage for different generators. In our third contribution, we provide a robustness assessment framework for OFO. It starts from acquiring different measurements, then the dual updates, the primer updates, and the set point deployment, and finally, we run AC power flow to simulate the system response from the distribution system. During this process, we consider various sources of uncertainties, including modeling inaccuracy, measurement errors, communication failures, communication delays, unnoticed topology changes, and time-varying generation and load. We further developed 4 different metrics, including active power curtailment ratio, constraint violation, tracking error for signal given by the TSO, and a RMSE value, which is a deviation from the deterministic case where no uncertainties are assumed to be present. The results show that the strategy is sufficiently robust to time-varying generation loads, to modeling accuracy, measurement errors, communication failures, but can fail under unobserved topology changes, which imply we use the old sensitivity matrix in the simulation. And it can also fail under systematic communication delays, shown on this figure on the right side. In our fourth contribution, we developed a distributed OFO based on communication only between physical neighbors. The inverse of the voltage sensitivity matrix have a certain sparsity pattern that it only has non-zero entries in the diagonal part and also between nodes which are physically connected. One of the challenges in developing this algorithm is solving a scaled projection problem shown on this slide. Because X is not a sparse matrix, we need global information to solve its optimum. And we made an important observation, which is the gradient of this projection problem can be approximated by the voltage between those 2 different set points, U and Q, at iteration k plus 1. We analyze this strategy and simulate in a low-voltage system. The simulation results show that it is comparable with the centralized control and outperforms other distributed and local approaches in the literature in terms of voltage limit violation. This is also shown on this table below. However, there are 2 limitations of this approach. First, it does not extend to congestion management. Second, it does not currently allow joint active and reactive power control. In the 5th contribution, we focus on a problem: how can we explore DRs with both short-term planning and real-time response capabilities, such as batteries and electrical vehicles. We propose a coordinated approach which combining offline optimization with online optimization. Specifically, we use the set points pre-calculated in the offline stage as reference set points in real-time operation. We use, for this case, for battery control, we use a local peak shaving strategy to balance local generation and demand. The figure below shows that the overall approach enforces voltage limits in the system, and it results in 31% less PV curtailment compared to an ideal benchmark OPF. This is also a general idea that can be used to combine also market operation with real-time control. To summarize, the optimization method achieved higher DR hosting capacity than the local peak shaving strategy. The fairness incorporated OFO significantly improved fairness. The strategy was sufficiently robust to various sources of uncertainties, but it can fail under unobserved topology changes and systematic communication delays. The developed distributed OFO enforces sufficient voltage regulation. Finally, the multi-time scale approach is general and can be used to efficiently leverage the flexibility of DRs, such as batteries. We provide 5 recommendations. The first is efficient heat pump operation algorithm, and we also interested in extend the distributed OFO to unbalanced systems. We're also interested in the real-world implementation of OFO, and model-free approaches and orchestration of various instruments are also interesting research topic to be pursued. With that, I would like to list the relevant references to the work in this thesis, and thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. Professor Slotweg, are you satisfied with the answer?
Yes, I am satisfied with the answer.
Thank you so much. I would like now to propose Professor Kiko from Polytechnic of Torino to continue the opposition. Professor Kiko, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So, Reactem Promovendus. I have some.
Yes. Thank you, because microphone was muted. Thank you.
Okay, I can start again. Also, Iactem promovendus. I have a few questions for you. First of all, nice work, really interesting as an overall framework that covers different aspects and packs them together. So the writing is very interesting, very accurate. I just made a very, very minor observations on my report, as I will not repeat it here. I would like to, we have not so much time, so we have to go to some specific focus. First of all, I would like to ask you something about the battery degradation model that you have considered in the second chapter, in particular, which is the relation between the hypothesis that you did for battery degradation and the models. There are many models that do this kind of things. Do you think that your model is sufficiently representative, or you think that you could put more things to detail much more some of the parts?
Hooggeleerde opponents, bedankt voor uw vraag. I would like, if I go to the part of this thesis that represents a model of the batteries, I would say this is more like a starting model that includes the important aspects of the battery modeling. For example, we consider the non-simultaneously charge and discharge, and we also covered a few discussions over how to model degradations. So to answer your question, I would say that this is more like a basic model you can start with, and based on top of this, you can build other more advanced models that consider the degradation of the batteries and also other potential aspects.
So do you consider it is easily doable to put more detailed models in the framework that you have, or you need to modify something to incorporate it?
Thank you for your question. Yeah, I do see there are linear models and nonlinear models in the literature that they have that can be an empirical model, it can be a data-driven model, or more physics-based model, and those additional modeling can be added on top of those existing equations I show on this thesis.
Okay. Another point is, again, as an extension, a possible extension, you mentioned unbalanced systems, and this can be done, it's more like using the solver. And do you think it is also doable, an extension to three-phase weakly meshed networks, or loops, for example, structures that are not radial?
Hooggeleerde opponents, thank you for your question. For the strategy of online optimization, what we need to use to represent the model in the algorithm is a sensitivity matrix. So this including voltage sensitivity matrix and power flow sensitivity matrix. In case of there are different approaches to simulate this matrix. For example, if you have a model of the system, what you can do is iteratively adjust the set points of controllable nodes, and then you can simply run a power flow to observe the change, for example, in the voltage. So from that case, as long as we can solve power flow, we can represent those sensitivity matrix in the system. So for that, I would say the methodologies are readily extended to weakly meshed unbalanced systems.
Okay, thank you. Another point is fairness. You did a good job on fairness. I would just like to summarize some points. There are different definitions in general of fairness and different quantities that you can consider. First of all, you can consider generation only or export, and also you can consider absolute values or relative values and things like this. So in your opinion, which are the major points of improvement that you can do with your approach with respect to some basic approaches that have been proposed?
Hooggeleerde opponents, thank you for your question. The main contribution of the work in Chapter 4 is that we identified the source of unfairness, which is the buses that located at the end of the feeder. They, by physics, have more impact in voltage control. And our strategy, the strategy we propose can extend to not only in this thesis, we focus on proportionally fairness, so we want every generators to be curtailed the same percentage, but can be also extend to other considerations. For example, you want you then to be curtailed simply equally. You can also consider economically fairness or other forms of fairness. The idea we propose is more general, and they can be applied to different notions. But I also would like to point out that we focus on the distributive fairness. So we consider the benefits and the cost. We do not consider other like procedural fairness or other more general concepts in like energy justice context.
Okay, that's fine. Just again, remaining on fairness. If you look at the problem considering voltages, of course, we know what is done, but we can have some cases, for example, in urban distribution systems, in which the voltage issue is not the first one. The main issue is, for example, the branch loading. So in that case, is no longer an issue of having the far points that may be treated in an unfair ways, maybe is even the opposite. So how do you comply also with this case?
Hopefully, its opponents. Thank you for your question. Yep. We in the single phase simulation, we simply assume that all generators. We assume that when deriving those sensitivity matrix for power to power flow, we assume that it's a lossless system. So every generator would actually contribute simply equally to the loading issues at the beginning of the distribution feeder or the transformer. If we apply the same principle, we say that as long as they are on the same phase, they are on the same feeder, we can assume the generators would contribute equally to the overloading issue. So we can simply set the sensitivity as, say, -1. Means if you generate an extra 1 kilowatt hour of power, then the transformer would fix. In the case of overloading by PV production, you would have less overloading.
Okay, so in general, if we look at the one node, we can have a couple of situations. A situation in which there is already too much generation. And so if we want, for example, to reduce the total losses of the system, okay, you consider the lossless system now, but let's expand a bit the reasoning. If we want to, for example, use a classical objective, which is reducing the losses in the distribution system, we may have two situations. One is the one in which we have already too much generation, and so it would be beneficial to add a load in that node to reduce the losses. And the other one is the opposite, of course, because we are talking about net power at the end. So how can you think that these different types of cases can impact on the fairness that you are determining?
Hopefully, its opponents. Thank you for your question. If you consider an objective function of minimizing losses, in all the case of a optimization algorithm, what you need to do is to derive the gradient between the object function and your controllable devices. And then during this process, you would have a term more or less like a power factor. So if you see that's a normal power flow direction, and then if it's a case by PV production, you will see the term as a minus term. So when you derive this gradient, you would naturally consider the impact of production or demand. So the congestion that is either caused by generation or by demand. And if you, again, eliminate unfairness based on the geographic location of the different generators, then you would still, I would expect that the algorithm would still enforce the fairness consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Professor Kiko, are you satisfied with the answers?
Yes, I have one last very quick question. If you had to start again, if you had to start again your work, would you change something in the approach that you used or in the methods?
Short answer, please.
Hopefully, it's opponents. Thank you for the question. I will start from the online feedback optimization a bit earlier in my PhD. Then I can do a bit more, maybe bit more theoretical work in this aspect.
Okay, thank you very much.
Professor Kiko, for your position. Now I would like to propose to continue the opposition to Dr. Grammatico from Technical University of Delft.
Dank u, mevrouw de rector. Geachte promovendus, let me start saying that I enjoyed very much reading your thesis, and in particular I enjoyed seeing how control and optimization ideas apply to power systems. My first question is about robustness of your approach, so chapter 5 from page 86 onwards. On this page, you define some metrics, some performance quantification metrics. And my question is how those metrics relate to robustness, since by reading the formulas, it seems they relate also to optimality of the closed-loop dynamics induced by your algorithm.
Dear Lead's opponents, thank you for your question. We consider four different metrics, which are considered from actually for the three actors in this algorithm. The first is the customers, who own PV generation. So we use the power curtailment ratio to represent the impact on them. So that also relates to optimality of this algorithm. And then for the average voltage violation and the loading limit violation of the cables and the transformer, we are considering the interest of the local DSO. So if we have a higher voltage limit violation or other violation, we would say that the impact on the security of the system is compromised. And finally, we consider the tracking error for a signal that we assume that is to send from the TSO to the DSO to helping them balance their system. This is we consider from the aspect of the TSO to see if those signals are being tracked well or not.
Thank you for your answer. A natural follow-up would be, would you think you could slightly modify your proposed algorithm in order to have formal guarantees on robustness to measurement noise and uncertainty?
Dear Lead opponent, thank you for your question. For the measurement noise, there are existing approach in the literature, which, for example, combine a state estimator with the all-fault algorithm. And there are also a data-driven method that you can derive the sensitivity matrix based on the data. So in that aspect, those can be, the original algorithm can be modified to consider the uncertainties of modeling accuracy and measurement errors more systematically.
Okay, thank you very much. My second question is about chapter 6, and in particular the convergence analysis on page 105.
Yep.
And the proof continues in the other page as well.
Yep.
So I read that in the inner loop of your proposed algorithm,
yep,
there is a projected gradient algorithm,
yep,
for solving a quadratic program.
yep.
And in the proof, it is claimed that convergence of this inner loop is reached in a finite number of steps.
That's a dear Lead opponents. That's an assumption we used when we, yeah, that's an assumption we made.
Yes. So my question is, how can we reach convergence in a finite number of steps when the projected gradient algorithm is guaranteed to converge only after an infinite amount of steps? Is this related to practical or pragmatic considerations?
Yeah, sehr geehrte opponents, thank you for your question. Yeah, in the first, so if you go to any original literature for the convergence of the projected algorithm, the conclusion, the result would be that the algorithm would converge in an infinite number of iterations if you have a step size that is small enough. But in practical, in our simulation, we found the algorithm generally converges within a finite number of iterations. And in this simulation, we even assume if we just simulate for 4 or 5 iterations for the inner loop, that the overall algorithm also performs well. So I would say it's more from a practical perspective, because when you implement this algorithm in an online setting, you wouldn't have time to run this for an infinite number of iterations.
Okay, so I gather from your answer that you have checked indeed that those small errors that are present in the inner loop do not accumulate when you iterate the outer loop of the algorithm. Is that a correct interpretation of your answer?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm satisfied with the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Grammatico, for your position. And I would like to propose to continue the opposition to Professor Cook.
Geachte promovendus, my compliments with this nice work. Also my compliments to the supervisors. I read it with great interest. I have a number of questions in a row, short questions, please with a short answer, and then maybe we can flesh out something a bit later. I looked at your research questions, and then your final research questions is about massive combined MV-LV grids and architectures for that. Also, your final contribution is on that topic, but that topic is described in the opening chapters of your thesis. Why isn't that the final chapter?
Yeah, hooggeleerde opponent, thank you for your question. So we have a story we would like to focus. That is, we start from the offline optimization and then to online optimization and then to a combination in the temporal scale. So we combine then the offline and online optimization. Finally, we would like to extend all the approaches to a larger system, to medium voltage and low voltage system.
Yeah.
So that's a flow we would like to follow.
But why don't you have this flow then in your questions? Because it seems to be the most important question. But it's in your flow line. It is not.
In the flow line of the thesis, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. In the thesis, we would like to say we put this in the offline optimization chapter.
Okay.
Because it's also falls into the area.
Okay. When I look at page 41, you know. 41. You have your problem definition for this part, and there you have in the middle this block of equations. There, the indices, the j and the I, these are locations.
Yeah, that's a node.
But you don't have time in this one.
Yeah.
How does time play a role in this?
Hooggeleerd opponents, bedankt voor jouw vraag. So this is a real-time optimization, real-time operation that they are not timely, they are not coupled for different time steps. So in this case, we have the case of distributed generation, such as PVs.
Yeah.
So they are
so
not.
You keep on running this algorithm in a real-time sense, feeding with information from the grid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. With that, it's a bit of a break of with the tradition that we have in distribution system operations, because there's a lot of planning and Why is this real time? We never did real time that much.
Yeah.
Why is it suddenly important?
Yeah. I thank you for your question. So I would say in the case of PV control, for real-time control, then there isn't much role to play for in day ahead, because your forecast and your prediction can be inaccurate. And what I would say, this is more like a fallback strategy, that in the planning you can still keep the works in the planning phase. For example, I think of controlling, for example, the tap changers and other slower reacting devices. You can continue those work in the planning stage, but in real time, this is like a fallback strategy you can count on to ensure the security of the network.
Okay. And then 2 pages further, you have table 3.1. And then as a computer scientist, I got interested because then you say computation, and then with integrated, it is fast is with a small scale and slow is with a large scale, and decentralized it's the other way around. What does it mean? How can you explain that?
Yep. Thank you for your question. If you have a integrated optimization, then you have when the system scales, the computation speed would be compromised. So that when I'm suggesting that when you have the system that being scaled, the computation will be slower. And for the decentralized algorithm, if you have a large system, then compared to the integrated architecture, the computation would be expected to be faster, because you can solve things in parallel and in a distributed way. And if you have a very small scale, then the overhead from communication might not compensate for the computational speed achieved from parallel computing.
Okay, so large scale, small scale is compared, or fast and slow is compared to the integrated case.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, right. And then if you talk about scale, what is then large and what is small?
Yeah. Well, thank you for your question. To be honest, we haven't really scaled our system to a scale that is large enough so far for our decentralized algorithm to be faster.
Yeah, but still you say it's massive. It's, what is it? Massive, massive combined MVLV grids.
Yeah. If you think of the Netherlands, the whole distribution system in the Netherlands, that might be considered as a large system.
Large, yeah.
From my aspect.
And your simulations were a small subset.
We have only one medium voltage system of 20 nodes, 17 nodes, and then we have 3 low voltage systems that are from 50 to 90, 100 nodes, something like that.
Would it be possible without scaling the simulation up, but just by a calculation, reason about the scalability, if you really go to massive levels?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Well, could you, because I think now the fast and slow is, you conclude that from your simulations.
Yeah, it's actually more like expected.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And can you without doing simulations, could you analyze the scalability of these algorithms, with pen and paper? Would that be possible?
Yeah, there are probably complexity. There are theory over the complexity of different algorithms.
Yeah.
And then I would expect for the integrated approach, you would have a certain complexity, and then for the decentralized one, the complexity might be a bit more steady, more stable.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And did you do this kind of analysis? Do you know whether it's it scales with scales quadratic or with a logarithmic or?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay. Okay. So that would be an addition.
Yeah.
Is there more time?
Yes, it is, but for the short question.
Okay,
please.
I'm doing short questions now. I wanna go back to Professor Gianfranco's focus on fairness. So you describe different ways of fairness. If you would be a homeowner yourself and you live in a house,
Yeah.
which fairness would you feel like is the most fair?
If it's best for me, I would feel
Yes.
it's fair. Yeah. Yeah. I would say probably it's kind of, it's a very personal idea. If I have a large generator, I would say don't do proportionally fairness, because if everybody curtail the same amount, then comparing to my generation, I'm curtailing basically nothing. But if I have a small generator, I would prefer to curtail proportionally. Then those large generators will be curtailed much more.
Yeah.
And then they will contribute to the problem a lot more.
Yeah.
So that's really a personal.
Is there a chance that you will ever agree with your neighbor?
Yeah, probably no. If we have different size of generators.
Professor Cook, are you satisfied with the opposition, with the answers on your question?
Yes, I'm satisfied.
Thank you so much. I would like to propose that the opposition is going now to the opposite table and invite Mr. van der Molen.
Yes, geachte promovendus. Thank you for your extensive work, 4 years in which you looked into optimization from different angles, different models, online, offline, culminating in a multi-timescale optimization model and introducing it and combining it with concepts like comfort and fairness. Now, I would like to ask you a question on the relationship of the control optimization algorithms with the input data. Because in the end, you make judgments and make calls about the quality of the optimization. And my question has to do with how you are able to generalize the outcome. You make statements like the solution is optimal or does provide, like in page number 1, give you 5.7% less PV curtailment. Can you elaborate a bit on how did you select your input data? How did you make sure that it is good enough in order to do those judgments? Can you bring us a bit on your selection and your path you followed on getting input data?
Zeer geleerd opponents, bedankt voor je vraag. In the process of my PhD, I did mostly simulation studies. We used the open source data in the same bench data is one of the example. They have a nice data sets of topologies, profiles, and then for the online feedback optimization, we need the data that is in a very high resolution, for example, in the second scale. And the data I found is one of the ECO data sets. I don't remember which party collected those data, but we mainly chose the data based on the need of the modeling of the optimization algorithm, and then we try to find what data are available. And right now in our group, we kind of do not have a systematic like data sets that everybody can benchmark their algorithms on. So I was just trying to find the data that's satisfy my needs and is open source online.
Thank you. You also included an actual live testbed in your investigation, your research. And of course, knowing the state of the grids as they are today, both transport forecasts, but also the online observability might not be to the level where your optimization algorithm should function. Can you elaborate a bit on how that was handled in the real-life application?
Dear lead opponents, we have a practical study on managing the heat pump connection using a local peak shaving strategy developed by the DSO. and a central optimal power flow control strategy. So in the simulation, we need different sources of data, including topology data, which I was able to retrieve from the gentleman sitting next to you. And then for the profile data, I think that's a bit far away. I think we either use the real anonymized data from the DSO, or we also used a open source data circulating in our group or in some online open source project. And some of the benefits we got from this real testbed is that we are implementing some real consideration from the heat pump end users. So they have certain setting for their heat pumps. For example, you cannot be switch on and switch off too frequently. We assume it to be 45 minutes. So if you switch on, it has to stay online for 45 minutes. And then there are other real practical considerations. For example, like once in a week, you have to hit the heat pump or the water tank up to 65 degrees to kill bacteria, stuff like that, which we're not able to model, but it's a nice experience from those real projects.
Thank you. Now going forward to the multi-timescale approach and combining that with fairness. What you see in the multi-timescale approach is that you combine both the day ahead and the real-time algorithms. And if you look into how the power system is operating today, you have to deal with suppliers who operate on both time frames. Now combining that with fairness, I understand your fairness is mostly has to do with the consumer. But the consumer has a contract with the supplier and he pays a price. And he has two levers to control the real time, but also the day ahead one. So question number one is the fairness. How fair are your algorithms towards the power suppliers who operate mainly on day ahead today?
Zeer geleerd opponents, bedankt voor jouw vraag. The fairness consideration we had in this work mainly focused on real-time operation. If you would like to think or consider certain kind of fairness notion also in the day-ahead planning stage, then there are some approaches in the literature that you can brute forcefully incorporate fairness as a constraint or as a certain form of objective function. Then you can use those approaches to enforce fairness to power suppliers when you run those kind of optimization or control in day ahead.
Okay, thank you. And one final question. The multi-timescale approach would seem quite suitable to, for instance, the energy hubs that we see today. There could be a basis for an energy management system there and provide services to the members of the energy hub. If you were to build or run one of these energy hubs, what would be your recommendation? Optimize for the day ahead, optimize for the real time? Where would be your business volume and where would you bet on?
Zeer geleerd opponents. I would bet on the coordinated approach, that you can perform any objective of optimization, economical, technical, in the day-ahead planning stage, but you always have the real-time control as a fallback to ensure the security of the system.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm satisfied.
Thank you very much, Mr. van der Molen, for your position. And I would like to propose the floor now for the continuation of an opposition to Mr. van der Acker, please.
Dank u wel, mevrouw de voorzitter. Geachte promovendus, your research shows a high potential increasing the hosting capacity, but it also comes at the price of having insight in all the connections, what will happen. So, as a DSO, we are starting basically from zero now because we have some transformer measurements, but we don't have much insight in what all the customers do. Neither can we send signals to customers. So if we want to start this, that's where I want to ask you to elaborate a little bit on, because if we look to your proposal of multi-timescale coordinated control, chapter 7, you say it's a very robust approach, which doesn't require precise grid topologies and doesn't require intrusive load metering. So that sounds as an approach which is robust to start a different control scheme. So nowadays we have, as a DSO, only transformer or cable measurements, and the market responds with an aggregated flex. So to your opinion, if you would advise us, what would be the essential changes which we have to do to the aggregators? What in the present aggregated point has to be changed? What's most critical to get this off the ground? I hope you understand.
Sehr geehrte opponents, bedankt voor jouw vraag. You're asking the most critical change that aggregators need to do to allow for those kind of real-time control and data optimization. Well, I would say that the aggregators would when the DSO send signals to the aggregator, then the aggregator needs to disaggregate these signals and actually got these signals implemented in the household, which they have a contract on. That's one of the challenges. And then also the aggregators, they themselves might also have other responsibilities. For example, balancing responsibility, as we were discussing. And then if they need to enforce certain kind of control in one part of their portfolio, then they also need to be able to balance their portfolio. For example, for the task of balancing to stick to whatever they plan in the day-ahead stage. So that's what I would say are the critical changes that the aggregator needs.
Thank you. So I was looking for it. How essential is it that aggregators cannot work with portfolios anymore, but have to work with specific responses from connections? Is that an essential requirement, or can they still do some kind of aggregator in their response to the DSO, what they will supply? That's
Sehr geehrte opponents. I would say the benefits of aggregation is huge. If you have only a few devices, the amount of flexibility you can provide, the amount of service you can provide is limited. If you can aggregate a large portfolio of end users of DRs, then you would have more service to offer to the system operators. So for that, I would say, it's more beneficial to have a kind of aggregation of the small scale DRs.
Yes, that was that I understand. I actually was what I was trying to find out whether the aggregator has to respond on a connection, or whether for this kind of control, or whether he can respond by cable or by low voltage grid. It is flexibility. And if it has to be by connection, I was wondering, what do you consider a coverage range of the connection that participate in this control to make the control feasible, giving extra benefits?
Yeah. Dear Heliad opponents, thank you for your question. I would say, of course, one have to focus on the DRs that actually have an impact on whatever objective you try to control. For example, you want to control voltage problem, then it has to be the generators or the consumer that are also located at the same feeder. Otherwise, you're not contributing anything. Or if you have overloading from the transformer, then it's DRs that are connected to the same transformer that has some certain kind of overloading problem. So that's the scope of the aggregation that is needed.
And can you also elaborate on the metric? How much flexibility should be working in this system as a percentage of connections or as a volume? What kind of metrics would you advise us before we really start implementing this control scheme?
Yeah, thank you for your question. I would say first you have to identify the problem where you would like to use the flexibility for. And then, for example, for the case of transformer overloading, if you have certain period of historical data, then you might be able to see how much, what amount of power, like flexibility, we need to solve this kind of problem. So then, if in the case of transformer, then I would say the metric should be in kilowatts, megawatts, so in those kind of metric.
Mr. van der Akker, are you satisfied with the answers?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you so much for your position, and I would like to bring the position to that table and give the word to the co-promoter, Dr. Moore.
Dank u, mevrouw de rector. Geachte promovendus, first of all, I would like to congratulate you with your thesis on a very relevant topic when you read the newspaper nowadays. Well, and I also would like to thank you for what I learned from you as your daily supervisor, because it was a journey for you, but also a journey for me as a supervisor, and I learned a lot from it. So thank you for that. Well, now, because we have had a lot of discussions already during the last years, I would like now to broaden the scope a bit. And my first question is, in your research, you mainly looked at low voltage networks. You partly looked at medium voltage network. You also looked at well, the combination between them, how they could interact with each other, influence each other. As you know, we now recently also started a project on real-time control of high voltage networks, because well, from this research we learned that it's interesting to control the network real time. But from just what's your idea about applying the same methodology to high voltage network and maybe also to the combination of medium and high voltage network? Do you think we should apply the same methodology as you did, or should we apply completely different methodologies, technologies? What's your opinion about that?
Zeer geleerd co-promoter, bedankt voor jouw vraag. If we look at the algorithm of online feedback optimization, it requires a sensitivity matrix of the system. And for high voltage networks, for example, for the case of power flow, you already have the power transfer distribution factor, which are already being used in high voltage system for market type of studies. And extending the same methodology to high voltage system is actually could be a lot easier because you have more devices you can control, and then the algorithm works well and has certain robustness, have nice properties that, for example, you have certain non-controllable loads in the system that you do not have data, then you don't even need them. So I would say that it would be a nice starting point to look into, but then there are other potential methodologies that are also interesting, can be developed also in this new project.
Yeah. So if I understand you correctly, you say in several ways applying it to high voltage network is easier than applying it to low and medium voltage networks, but are there also aspects of it is more complicated maybe?
Zeer geleerd co-promoter. Thank you for your question. That's a good question. Then in high voltage networks, then there are probably a lot more planning going on, and then you would have more impacts on the system balancing. And if you control only like in low voltage network, the amount of say power that you can impact is very small. It's in kilowatts, a few hundred kilowatts. But if you can apply the same strategy to high voltage system, then we are talking about a lot higher megawatts, gigawatts. Then the impact on system balancing could be a lot harder and a lot more challenging.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I can what I can imagine indeed. So fortunately, also room to work for our new PhD candidate. My second question. Well, I mentioned it a bit already. A lot of congestion in the net in Dutch networks on all voltage level, high voltage, medium voltage, low voltage. Recently, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, there was a letter from the Minister of Climate and Green Growth to the Parliament about the impact of batteries in low voltage networks. Because what we also see from your research that batteries are an interesting solution to avoid congestion in low voltage networks. What we see is that the number of batteries, household batteries, increasing very rapidly. Network operators are now becoming a bit worried about the fact what will happen when all those batteries will be activated on balancing markets. Assume now that I would send your thesis to the minister, to the parliament, and you had to appear there and to give your opinion about giving this issue, I think, which is really an issue. On one side, batteries can help solving network congestion, but on the other side, they might also worsen it by acting on balancing markets. What would be your advice on how to solve that issue? Can the work you did in your thesis, can it help to solve that issue, or will it worsen the problem? What modifications can you make to solve this issue, or to at least to weaken or to limit the effect of it? What's your...
Zeer geleerd co-promoter, bedankt voor jouw vraag. Well, that's indeed like a challenging issue, and the principle we developed in the multi-time scale coordinate approach is that for the batteries, you can optimize the batteries for the benefits of themselves, or for balancing services, or for economic benefits, and then this might worsen the congestion problem in the distribution system. Or they might be nice that they try to help the distribution system by getting paid or financial benefits. And then what we have in this thesis is that we have a real-time control, that when those kind of data optimization fails, you have a fallback that you can always ensure the security of the system.
Yeah, okay. So actually your control is at least a kind of a fallback mechanism to avoid issues in your low voltage network, because it will solve the issue. But what will happen then with the balancing market? What fallback mechanism do we have there?
Zeer geleerd opponents, co-promoter, bedankt voor jouw vraag. We always assume in the thesis that all the aggregators or the balancing responsible parties have a large portfolio. If you only control a certain part of the portfolio of them, then they can balance from the other assets in their portfolio. That's an assumption we work on.
Yeah, okay. Then my next question. In your thesis, you give a number of recommendations for further research. You also provide, you mention your contributions. You did it in your thesis. You also did it in your presentation you gave. In your opinion, what is your most important contribution, both from the practical perspective, so for the application at a network operator, but also from the perspective of scientific perspective?
Ja, zeer geleerd co-promoter, bedankt voor jouw vraag. I'm most proud of...
Since the bidder had pronounced the rest, I would like to invite doctoral candidate to take a seat with the audience. The first part of the procedure is over. The members of the committee will retire to deliberate further the results of the
presentations and promotion procedure. I'm reopening the session, and I would like to ask the candidate to come to this table, please, and stand in front of me, please. So, the doctorate board of Eindhoven University of Technology, represented by us, has examined your dissertation and heard your defense of it. On the grounds of aforementioned, the doctorate board has decided to award you the degree of doctor. I request that the first promoter acquit himself of the duties entrusted to him.
Uit kracht van de bevoegdheid, ons toegekend door de wet en namens het College voor Promoties bevorder ik u, S Zhan, tot dokter en verleen ik u de rechten die verbonden zijn aan de dokterstitel. Ten bewijze hiervan overhandig ik u het diploma, ondertekend door de rector magnificus en de promotoren. Zeer geleerde Dr. Zhan, dear Sen. It's a great honor and a great pleasure to address you this way after 4 years of hard work. Congratulations with the completion of your PhD thesis, also on behalf of co-supervisors Anne, Johan and Wouter, who are also members of this committee. After finishing secondary school, you chose to continue your education in engineering. In 2018, you obtained your bachelor's degree in Energy Environment Systems Engineering from Zhejiang University in China. In 2020, you obtained your master degree in Sustainable Energy from the Technical University of Denmark in Lyngby. The topic of your master thesis was Distributionally Robust Chance-Constrained Flexibility Planning for Integrated Energy Systems. This title already echoes the subject of your PhD research and has indeed turned out to be a good preparation for your next step. In September 2020, you started your PhD project with the title Grid Edge Control. The GEC project was a joint effort of our EES group and our long-term strategic partners, the 3 large DSOs of the Netherlands, Enexis, Liander and Stedin. That all 3 DSOs supported the project and were represented in the supervisory team proves the relevance and the potential of the research topic. We also want to thank our partners, who are also represented in this committee, for their financial support and for their important contributions to your research. The goal of the project was to develop methodologies and algorithms which allow the combination of decentral and central ICT architectures to improve local dynamics of the electricity grid and thus the utilization of the total available grid capacity without endangering grid security. This sounds challenging, and that it proved to be indeed. The aim of your PhD research was to contribute to alleviating the network congestion that has spread over the whole of the Netherlands and that occurs in the high voltage transmission grid as well as in the medium and low voltage distribution grids. To this end, you developed a model of the distribution system and you estimated disturbance data such as power consumption of non-controllable loads in order to optimize the DER operation for a given cost function while satisfying network constraints. First, you applied the concept of the optimal power flow to achieve this goal, and you showed that it yields better results than straightforward curtailment. Thereafter, you applied online feedback optimization, which is better suited for real-time application than the optimal power flow method. You paid special attention to the issue of fairness, which aims to equitably distribute costs among end users during network operation and avoid that some customers are hit harder by the measures to mitigate grid congestion than others, as is typically the case with traditional curtailment. Your PhD research delivered important contributions and has resulted in an impressive list of publications in top-ranked peer-reviewed journals and conferences. The cooperation you have established with many researchers, both inside and outside our electrical energy systems group, and the impact you have made with your work is reflected by the many co-authors that show up in your publication list. This also shows your willingness and capability to cooperate with other people. This was also visible in the smooth cooperation you established with various colleagues at Leander, where you did a case study to explore the practical applicability of the concepts you developed. The conference paper you published on this case study won the Best Student Paper Award at the EPSCOM conference in Hong Kong, proving its impact and quality. This also proves your excellent writing skills. Draft publications you sent to us as your supervisors were always of very good quality, well structured, clear and correct with respect to the English language. This skill saved both you and us much time and will prove to be very useful in the future. You are also very committed and determined. This is an essential quality for a researcher, but it also helped you through the difficult COVID time occurring around the start of your project, when we worked from home and when it was for a long time impossible to visit your loved ones in China. We have come to know you as an independent and capable researcher who is very knowledgeable on advanced optimization techniques and their application to electricity grids. You are also able to explain the underlying principles clearly to others who are less familiar with the concepts and methods you apply, without getting lost in their complexity or in the details of the specific application. Only people who master their topic and know what they are doing can explain complex and advanced topics in a comprehensible way such that others are able to follow them. And this mastery you certainly have acquired. Another area in which you seem to have acquired mastery, at least in the eyes of your supervisors, is table tennis. You are very good at this game. Maybe your Chinese background plays a role here because China has won by far the most Olympic medals in this specific discipline. Your hobby brought you to all kinds of locations in the province of Brabant and sometimes even further, and may have helped to find your way in the Netherlands. Although, as you admit in your thesis yourself, you do not, or maybe not yet, master the Dutch language, something to work on. Dear Sen, we congratulate you with the completion of your PhD thesis today. We are looking forward to your future contributions to the inspiring and challenging topic of electric power and energy systems, building forth on the solid foundation that we together have laid in the past years. We are very glad that you have accepted a postdoc position in our group and that we can continue our successful cooperation for the time to come. And we wish you all the best for the future, both professionally and personally, together with your loved ones.
Arising from the doctor's degree. So according the scientific degree of the PhD involves duties as well as rights. As a holder of this degree, you are committed to standards of scientific integrity, trustworthiness, intellectual honesty, openness, independence, and societal responsibility. These standards are described in more detail in the Netherlands Code of Conduct for Research Integrity and in the Eindhoven Code based on it. I am stressing that for you. You also have duties towards society. You must be clear about the boundaries of your own expertise, and you must communicate honestly and independently about the results of your work, including potential risks associated with it. You are committed to the ethical codes for research and design involving human subjects, or animals. This is official regulations, and I hope you will follow undoubtedly these regulations and rules. To soften these strict rules, I would also would like to tell you that your rights nowadays also might be sooner or later to sit behind this table. It's very nice role, and to enjoy with the questioning in the other candidates depends on your future academic or industrial career. Officially, with this, I have to close the session and ask you to take the seat. However, because we have online member of the committee, Professor Kiko, we will propose all members of the opposition or members of the doctoral committee to stand in front of one of the screens and to make a photo with you, the first one, and second with the members of your family or your friends. I guess we will move to that corner. So officially the session is over, but I would like to ask all audience, please keep and sit on your seats and not stand up yet, just to and after making a photo, Professor Kiko will make very short wording or talk to you, please. People, you can address. Professor Kiko, you can address your words right now.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. It has been a real pleasure for me to participate in this commission. I have had the chance to see very good work done and all the good qualities that you have applied to your work, well written, mathematically sound and strong, and this is a very good basis for your future work. I heard, understood that you have a position for postdoc, which is really a very good point for you and for us as scientists to continue having your scientific collaboration in this domain. So best wishes from my side for all your future activity and for your life, of course, first of all. Okay.
Thank you, Professor Kiko. Dear Dr. Zhan, would you like to tell something to Professor?
Professor Chico, unfortunately, you're not here, so you cannot join us for the reception. I really appreciate that you take the role of my committee member and spend so much time reading my thesis and provide really valuable comments. I really appreciate that, and I wish you success in your career and wish you have a nice Christmas time.
Thank you.
Now, Dr. Zhan, the session is over. You can take a seat and we can leave, the members of the committee are leaving the room. Thank you.